You gotta have a podcast.
You gotta have a podcast. You gotta have a podcast. You gotta have a podcast. You gotta have a podcast. You gotta have a podcast. You gotta have a podcast.
You gotta have a podcast. You gotta have a podcast. You gotta have a podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to You Gotta Have a Podcast. Now, the last couple conversations that we've had on the pod have been fast-paced, to say the least. I believe I was left breathless after at least Anna and Marcella's chats. But today's chat can be described as calming, thoughtful, methodical, a spa day for your eardrums. But the topic we're discussing is, of course, the Mad Max Fury Road, known as the entertainment industry. I'm joined by writer and comedian Natasha Vaynblat. She's a writer for NBC's A Little Late with Lily Singh and is the creator and star of Your Worst Fears Confirmed, which is on Comedy Central. Natasha was one of the first sketch comedy writing teachers I had when I moved to New York City, and I really have an immense respect for her and just how much she puts into her craft. She's taught me a lot, and it was really, really lovely to sit down and have this conversation with her. And I hope that you enjoy it. Here is my conversation with Natasha Vaynblat.
I'm really enjoying the pace of it because I asked you if you were doing stand-up because I'm just so curious of people who were doing it and now what they're doing. And I've done even less than you have. I've done one outdoor show and I think maybe 2 Zoom shows, and I'm just like, I'm not excited to do it at the moment. So I'm letting myself be okay with that. Where if you asked me last April, or no, not even, when did quarantine start? March, right?
Yeah, like March.
But for me too, one of my biggest shows was the last show I had before, I think the next day, my office, we went into quarantine. Wow. And it was just like this huge benefit show for this, it was like this female empowerment show. And there's just a bunch of comics on the bill that I was shocked that I was like one of the people on the bill. And it's just interesting to be like, oh, wow, that momentum has stopped. Yeah. But who knows how I'll feel tomorrow? I feel like every day is a roller coaster. But at the moment we're talking, and I'm still mostly excited about the script I'm working on, and I don't feel the urge at the moment to push myself to still compete in that stand-up world where I want to take a break. Yeah.
I completely feel you. I had a similar feeling. I had a really long conversation with Tracy Soren about this too, because I spent 5 straight years, because I had started as a writer and I felt really confident in my ability to write, even though I was new to sketch, but I knew that I was a good writer. Just had to learn the rules of different types of things. But
I can confirm you are.
Thank you so much.
You were a star when you were in my sketch class.
Well, thank you so much. You were an extraordinary teacher.
Wow, you made it easy. Thank you.
But I spent 5 years being kind of so frustrated and so determined to have people also think of me as a performer. And I felt kind of impostery about that for a long time. And then I think I've realized, since I haven't been able to perform in the pandemic, there's certain types of performing that I'm just I just don't know if I'll go back and ever really do live sketch again. I'm just I think I'm done with that. I've been trying to sell my wigs. I'm just but I do miss stand up, but I haven't missed it enough to go do a park show. And the Zoom shows, I feel, are just draining and not fulfilling.
Yeah. All the parts of stand up that I love at the moment are kind of on break. Which makes it harder to be well, then what are you chasing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I sort of realized, I was wow, I spent all this energy for literally 5 years, chasing down and holding on white knuckles to the idea that I was a performer just as much as I was a writer or a director or whatever. And I'm kind of like, maybe, yeah, you know what? I'm not. I think maybe that's part of me, but it's not a huge whole, like, majority chunk.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, who knows? You know, I say this and then I'm like, maybe tomorrow I'll feel completely different. Mm-hmm. So it's all transient.
It's so true. And also
or ephemeral. That's the word. It's all ephemeral.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
I guess. Well,
ephemeral, transient. Well, yeah, either. I don't know.
I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's not any of those things. You sound smarter.
It's a very pretty word. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to name my daughter Ephemeral.
You'll be able to play her this podcast. And she's like, why am I named this?
So I'm curious to ask you, like, when you were first getting started in comedy, you started like in college, right? Or did you do stuff before that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I did. I mean, in high school, you know, I took theater classes and I did some improv in high school. Mm-hmm. And then so when I got to college, I knew the one thing that I was very good at comedy wise was improv. So I was, you know, determined. I was like, well, I'll definitely do the college improv troupe. Mm-hmm. And I tried out and I just could not get on the team for the life of me. I mean, I think I tried out 4 times or something until my friend finally pulled me aside and she was like, why don't we just start our own? You know, because this is just not happening for either of us. And it was Sashir Zameda of SNL fame. And I was like, are we allowed to do that? She was like, yeah, we can do whatever we want.
It's college, baby. We can do whatever we want.
She's always had that attitude, which I'm always inspired by.
Yeah. Because
I'm a scared little person. And so we did. And it was the best thing that I did all of college. And that was after I was told no a bunch of times. And I feel like if I had gotten on the troupe, it wouldn't have, pushed me as much as trying to start your own thing did. And that's the reason I went to New York, because I thought I was going to go to Chicago after college, because that's like, the improv mecca.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case, because we, as our improv troupe, went on like a festival. I think it was a North Carolina festival, and saw Death by Ruru, which was a UCB team at the time. And I remember turning to Sashir and being like, well, wherever they are, that's where I want to go, because that's the best improv I've ever seen. And that was New York. And I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't gone to the festival. And I wouldn't have gone to the festival if I hadn't done Amuse Bouche. And I wouldn't have done Amuse Bouche if I didn't get in to the Weathermen, which was the other team. And both are still going, which is kind of exciting too. Well, I guess not now, but
right this moment. But I honestly, though, I'm sure that whoever's the college kids on those teams right now, they're definitely doing Zoom shows. I'm sure.
Yeah, right? I hope so, I guess. Anything to stay sane.
Yeah. That's so cool and interesting too, because you think, you always think about the what ifs, at least I do. Mm-hmm. And like, I imagine if it was me in that situation and I had gotten on the first team, especially with college improv teams or any improv teams, or, anything where people are congregating in some sort of organized space, there's always like some internal like hierarchy or path that well, this is what we all do here, and we all do like this step, then this step, then this step, and then eventually we're all gonna go to Chicago, like you thought you might, or something. And maybe if you had gotten on that team, you would never have and ended up like on the path that you're on. Like, that's the thing. Totally. As silly as that, not getting on the college improv team. Oh no, I'm getting real woo woo, but it can really change the trajectory of your life. In a big way.
I mean, I think so. I think I would have still been doing comedy in some form or another. I think, I don't know, but I feel now in hindsight, I feel really lucky, that I didn't.
Totally. And honestly, really good on you as like a, probably like 19-year-old kid to start your own thing. Cause I definitely would have been too scared and be like, well, they said I'm not good, so I'm not good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I couldn't have done it on my own, you know?
True. Yeah. I mean, yeah, no one can do one man improv. But well, I guess technically, I think I've seen James Dwyer do it. But
yeah. Yeah, I think Alex Dixon did it for Cage Match once. I missed it, but I remember hearing that it was.
I do remember
epic.
hearing about that too. Yeah. The no one else on Stepfathers could go. So
Right.
Oh, God bless her. It is really interesting to me, like, whether you're a college kid or whether right when you move to a new city, like when you first got to New York or something like that, like, for example, commercials and auditions. And it's like, well, you have to get your headshots and then you have to take a Brook and Mary or some sort of audition class.
Right.
And then you have to like do this, do that, do this. And then it's like, is that always the case? I think the more and more I work and the more I pay attention to other people's paths, I realize that it's not the case. And like, I wonder if you had an epiphany moment like that, or you know, what your experience with that sort of phenomenon was like.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand why there are all of these structures, because we have picked an industry where there are no structures.
Mm-hmm.
So I naturally am like, it makes sense to gravitate in this very weird soup of like, well, how do I get a job? You know, it feels really nice to be like, okay, well, sure, I'll take these classes, you know, and I'll do this, and that'll make me feel like I'm actively progressing. And I think, you know, you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally understand. And I am definitely someone who gravitated towards those things. But when I look back and I think about where career-wise I had the most success, and granted, it's hard, you know, it's like kind of revisionist history, but I think the times where I felt like I moved up a notch was after doing something that was a response to not getting something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for example, like starting the improv troupe that really changed my life in college. And that was after, you know, I didn't get into one. Starting stand-up was a reaction to getting to the top of the UCB ladder and feeling like, oh, okay, well, I did it, but I still like career-wise, you know, like in this bubble of this theater, which I loved so much and was very much a home for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't really like, I got to the top and I was like, okay, well, now what, you know? And no one really had an answer, because it was like, you reached the top, this is it. But it wasn't until I started doing stand-up that I, you know, got my Comedy Central job. That was truly from the audition, which was entirely, you know, I feel like set me apart because of my stand-up. So, yeah.
Yeah. I relate to that really hard, because like I am also very of that mindset where it's either a no or it's not a no. For example, you just like realize that you're naturally at the end of your road.
Yeah.
It's just more about like, I feel like finding finding the right pair of shoes to walk down the road. I'm really heavy into the I swear to God, I don't even smoke weed. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just like really into analogies right now. Metaphors.
Hey, I say lean in, you know?
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, I think that's true for sure. I think it's harder to make that choice when you're in the moment. But that's why I am, especially in this time, being like, okay, well, what's the shoe you're most excited to wear? If I may borrow your analogy.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've kind of been letting myself do, where I feel like, every time I'm at one of these impasses, it's like, okay, well, allow yourself to do the thing you're excited to do, even though it doesn't necessarily seem like the right thing. There was Jim Jarmusch interview that I listened to a while ago, but he was saying, he was like, I'm like really excited that I'm a dilettante, and I've like always encouraged myself to be that, you know, to try different things because it all informs my work. I was like, I love that, you know, not being frustrated with yourself for kind of like dipping into a bunch of different things, you know, that excite you, because I think it does all inform ultimately what you're doing. Because I think as an artist, you're just trying to make sense of the world. So of course you should try different things.
Yeah. I love that, and I'm gonna have to look up that interview.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the popular ones. If you just search Jim Jarmusch interview, maybe it was after Patterson.
Okay.
It's at the Lincoln Center, but it's a good one.
All right, cool. I'll check it out. I love that. I mean, because I always have this sort of a little bit imposter syndrome-y, but more so like I'm personally confident in my skill level that like, not that I'm the best at everything, but like if I say I'm proficient at something, it means I'm proficient at it. And I'm fairly confident in that. But I had like, for example, when I like think about the way that other people might think of the fact that, I could be like, well, I know how to write and produce and I can shoot and edit and direct or whatever it might be. I get a little paranoid that people are like, well, you're doing too much. And to the point where literally 2 weeks ago, I was having an interview for a gig that I actually ended up getting. But in the interview, one of the EPs straight up asked me, he was like, are you like a jack of all trades, master of none? And I was like,
ouch.
Yeah, I was like, no, I'm good at everything I say I'm good at. That was my response, which was maybe a little dickish and pretty defensive. But
well, I mean, you got the job, and I think you felt that it was true, which it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times those questions come from the person who's asking their insecurity as opposed to the actual truth.
Yeah. Do you feel like because you do have a number of different skill sets, aren't you? Writing, performing, and like, creating videos that are in your fashion like account and all the different things that you've done and stand up and like, do you feel like that all of those different skill sets like help each other be more rounded? Like in your work?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, especially I feel like comedy itself too is a form that's an art form that's blending, and I feel like should always be blending. So people who are like, I only do stand up, which is fine, or I only do improv. I do think ultimately if the goal is to work in television, which it is for me, to make film or to work in television, I think it's only an asset. Like even at work now, I'm part of the time I'm in meetings and I'm pitching ideas that it's really useful to have a sketch background for those because I can look at the news and I can think of like, oh, what's a funny sketch idea? But then in the room or like in the Zoom room at the moment, improv has given me the skill to hear someone's idea and build on that.
Yeah.
And then part of the job is writing jokes for Twitter, which my stand-up background helps me with. And then part of the job is pitching or doing this series, this YouTube series called Your Worst Fears Confirmed that I do where I play a character and I write these, genre parodies of like a WebMD type doctor. And that is, all those skills in one. So I think it's all useful. And I feel very lucky that I got to experience all those things. And I feel confident in all of those because of all the time I spent dipping into all those skill sets that I think makes me a better employee.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that web series. It's very funny.
Thank you.
And also I watch a lot of those sort of types of videos on like the real versions of those on YouTube, like more to do with like food science or someone explaining something like that.
Yes.
But so I get a real kick out of it. But yeah, like I have the same feeling when my ultimate goal is also to work in TV or movies and to be, the big dream is like a showrunner or something, or a writer director type of person in general, writer producer type of person. And I like from the get was like the only reason I started doing improv was because I wanted to be a better writer. And then it just like sent me down this weird path of performing a lot more. But from the get, I realized that like, oh, like you have to talk to all these different departments and kind of wear all these different hats. And like the camera department has one language and the writers have another language and the editors have a third language and the talent has
Right.
To be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, I think, is such a valuable asset in the way that, like, I would never call myself a DP ever, but I know enough about cameras to explain what shot I think would make sense for this scene, you know?
Right.
Like that sort of thing. And I find it's, have you had like any experiences like when you have sort of found yourself dabbling in something new that then like set you down a completely different path that you didn't think would, you know, end up being a big part of your life? I know it's a kind of a big question.
Yeah, and I don't think so. Well, I mean, I was a high school teacher for 4 years, but I knew that ultimately wouldn't be the thing I moved to New York to do. But that certainly was a big part of my life, and something that, you know, I like threw myself into and wanted to be really good at. But I don't know, because I ultimately chose that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess, I mean, you had the show United Federation of Teachers, right? That was you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just from having seen that show, which I remember going to see at Chelsea back in the day, and it was great. And in that show, you talk a lot about how you were like I think when in the moments when you weren't being a character, it was like the interstitials where you're talking about like, I'm actually a teacher. And I remember thinking like, it's so cool. It's such based on a real and lived experience. And you could kind of feel that in the show. And that to me, even just like knowing that about you seems like, oh, well, that is sort of a thing. Like maybe if you had never been a teacher, you might not have written that specific show, you know?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to that dilettante thing, right? Which is, you use that. If you treat these experiences as, to borrow from another famous successful person, but Nora Ephron's whole thing was everything is copy, right? So it's like everything that happens in your life, you can turn it into something for your writing. Yeah. And I totally believe that. So yeah, it's like, I wouldn't have written that show if I hadn't been a teacher, but even while being a teacher, I knew that I was treating this experience as something that well, that's not true either. I guess I didn't know while teaching that I would write about it. But yeah, I don't know. I started answering that question. Now I've walked down a path where I'm like, I don't know where I started, but I don't know.
Here's like just a quick timeline question. Were you still a teacher when you started writing that show, or had you stopped teaching at that point?
I'd stopped teaching.
Oh, okay. So that was like reflective of your time then.
Yeah. I mean, it was fresh. I had just stopped teaching.
Right.
But yeah, I was not writing it while teaching. I just didn't have time to do anything but teach.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I did take improv classes at night. But that was all I could do. The idea of also then sitting down to write something was impossible.
Teaching is, I mean, listen, you were one, not me, but it seems like entirely, like just it depletes you of all your energy and time.
It was definitely all consuming, but I remember even at the time thinking like, because I did have friends, you know, who were waiters or, you know, were doing something that felt, you know, hours wise was equally, you know, the same amount of time that they were there, but I think emotionally didn't feel as draining, or at least the friends I talked to. Yeah. I remember at the time being like, you know, I actually think I prefer this because even when the job is very difficult, I know that it matters what I'm doing, where I think if I was working at a restaurant, I'd be much more frustrated because I'd be like, well, it doesn't matter if, you know, I plate this steak wrong for this fancy person.
Yeah. In the grand
so it
scheme
felt
of
a little less frustrating to be like, I'm so tired.
Yeah. From that anecdote, it seems like a sense of, it might be too grandiose to say like a sense of purpose, but like basically like is, how can I phrase this? I'll probably edit this mumbling bit out, but I feel like even if I just make someone laugh once, it impacts their life in some way. Do you feel like with the teacher thing, you were just saying like you felt that it was more worthy, that at least not more worthy, but to you worth it that you are having an impact? Do you feel that same way about other work that you pursue?
Well, I would like to say yes. I think deep down, I think being a teacher is probably more valuable to society being a good teacher than being a YouTube star. But I also believe, man, I feel like I've been quoting people left and right.
Please keep quoting.
What other famous person said this, but I'm sure I can look it up. But it's something to the effect of the greatest thing you can do for society is to make sure that you are pursuing a life that you love and feel is valuable, because that will, help you be a better citizen. And as much as I think and thought teaching was more important, I knew that the thing that made me so happy was doing comedy. Yeah. So I was like, I think I have to pursue that for myself, because I'll be a better, person in the world.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I guess to society as a whole, it is more valuable to have a happy and productive person working in the arts and entertainment than like a slightly unhappy, maybe not quite fulfilled person being a teacher.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's, I say that and then it's like, I think that's a very privileged thing to say. So absolutely. I also realize that for so many people that isn't, an option. Yeah. But at the time, for me, it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the caveat that comes with so many things about talking about working in this industry, especially when we're talking about obstacles, because there's like so many things standing in people's way that, even something as silly as like when I was growing up, I grew up with not a ton of money. And other than that, like we were happy and it was fine. But like there was this mentality in my family. My mom was like first generation, and it was just like people like us don't do things like that. Mm-hmm. when it came to work, having any job that wasn't like a steady job, like a 9-to-5 job. Did you experience like anything like that from like maybe adults or people in your life?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. So, I come from an immigrant family. Mm-hmm. We moved from Russia when I was still a kid. But so even though most of my life, I grew up in the US, it's still my parents' kind of like immigrant passion was to make sure that I had a steady job so mm-hmm. that I was financially secure, so that, I could be comfortable and safe. And it was really hard to disappoint them, by being like, actually, I'm going to try this freelance thing and I'm going to push to figure out a way to work in the arts. I think that was really scary for them, as it was for me. And I, also wanted to be grateful for, the life that they gave me. But I just knew that it was something I had to do. And I think ultimately they understood. And also once I started having success, they were so delighted because they didn't even know this was an option. I remember there was, maybe it was a few years ago now, which is crazy how much time has passed, but Comedy Central was sending me to Scotland for a week, just to make some videos about the Fringe Festival. And so I was telling my mom about it. And I don't even know if she'll remember this, but I remember this moment because it felt like such a victory. She was just, out of nowhere, she was like, wow, you live such an incredibly interesting life. I was like, yes, Aww. Yeah. She just seemed so delighted. But I say that. And then what I've been doing recently is, asking my parents a lot of questions about, their life as kids. And I just realized I know very little about them, mm-hmm. before I came into their lives. And I thought everyone in both of my parents' families was very much like, engineers, scientists, that kind of mm-hmm. 9-to-5 kind of work. And everyone in my mom's family is an artist. I'm like, what are you what? Why did you never tell me this? She's like, you never asked. I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah, it's like I shouldn't have to ask all the just offer up. That is so funny. I'm wondering if when, over the years when you were starting to just like test the waters, especially in New York when you get out of the college bubble and maybe even outside the UCB bubble a little bit when it comes to other sort of more dog eat dog professional capacities, like, for example, auditioning for things or submitting to things or, working with agents and managers. Did you ever have any experience of anyone telling you like, well, you're not going to get anywhere in this world unless you have, a high concept pilot that is like, perfect for Mike Schur to develop or something like that?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a great question. Off the top of my head, no, but no, especially like as far as my representation goes, I like them for that reason, that they're very hands off in that way. They're like, cool, when you have something, show it to us, but otherwise we're not going to tell you what your path should be.
That's great.
I don't think that's for everybody. I think some people prefer having it the other way, but I find that whenever I am actually told what to do, I like bristle and don't want to do it.
Same.
I'm like, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know, but that's just kind of the way it is. And for example, like when I started doing stand-up, I remember being like, I think everyone thinks I'm being stupid because I was like teaching, like sketch and improv at UCB, I like 401 or even 101, just all the different levels.
Yeah.
And then I would go to open mics immediately afterwards and all my students would be there, and would just like see me bomb. And I was like, this feels like, what am I doing? Or it's like, I'm on a different, like, it feels like almost I'm backtracking.
Yeah.
But I stuck with it because I knew I just really wanted to do it well. And I really loved doing it. And again, like some of my like best career highlights are from the stand-up special from Comedy Central that now is on the internet that I feel great about. And all the work I've gotten to do is a lot of times comes back to that clip. Yeah,
absolutely. Were there ever like not even reps, but just sort of like random schlubs that were around? I don't know, like, people when you were prepping to do a big set or film your Comedy Central spot or something like that, like something big. And everyone seems to have like the piece of advice they just want to shove down your throat. Like, how do you respond to those?
It's something it's something I'm still actively working on. And I think that's something that is like a good quality that I need to rein in, that I think because I came up with sketch and with improv where the idea was the collaborative hive mind is good and they will kind of like through that work, you'll find the best idea, the idea that kind of everyone agrees on. So usually when I get notes, I immediately incorporate them.
Yeah.
Overly so, where even though they are, on the face good notes, comedy is so specific to your own voice that even if it is a good note, it won't necessarily work. Like I've been given so many great joke pitches, it's like, hey, why don't you try this tag? And I hear it and I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. That's going to change everything. And then I try it and it falls flat because I think even subconsciously the audience knows, and I know that it's like, it's just not in my voice.
Yeah.
But it's still something I'm working towards. I also feel very lucky because the more I stay in this industry, the more I know when a person I'm collaborating with just like it just feels so right as opposed to it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And so what I've started doing is just really listening to that small group of people, as opposed to getting as many notes as I can and incorporating those notes.
Absolutely. I think like even that small group of people that that you vibe with and know that you collaborate with really well, to think of them as like sort of kindred spirits. You guys are on the same wavelength and must be in some ways if you collaborate so well together. I think lends to more the same way that it's more authentic to listen to those people than it might be to, like in the same way that it's more authentic to listen to yourself than it is to listen to that random person who maybe doesn't know your point of view or doesn't know your style or sense of humor as much. It could, pitch a great thing, but a great tag or something, but then ultimately it ends up not really being a right fit for you. Those people are more authentic to who you are.
Yeah, but I will say everyone, in general, I feel like it is always with the best intention. And I think the more time you spend working on your craft, the less of those notes you need. But at the beginning, oh my God, wish I had taken more notes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I struggled a little bit with that, taking all the notes to the point where I was like, I didn't even write this. And then I was like, okay, I need to throw this out and do something different, start over, because this is all notes now and I've totally gotten rid of my actual idea.
Right. Yeah, there's a danger in that.
Yeah. And so just to sort of, I think wrap us up a little bit, just kind of going back to talking about this year and these times and not necessarily the sad bits, but are there any things that because of the way that life is going to be a little different for probably in a whole maybe full other year, and we're all having to adapt the way that we work, the way that we are creative, the way that we think, and are there any ways in which you found that to be helping your process in a beneficial way, or just kind of it's a bummer, but you're getting through it with different types of...
Yeah, I mean, it changes day to day. It almost changes hour to hour. Mm-hmm. But I think at the moment I've gotten into a groove of where, I write for a few hours in the morning and then I write for a few hours in the evening. Mm-hmm. And then during the daytime, I'm at work, but on Zoom. Mm-hmm. And that feels really nice to simplify my life. Mm-hmm. Where before the pandemic, I was constantly in the evenings running around, doing shows, doing mics, just trying to fit a bunch of different things into my day, which I am surprised that I don't miss as much as I thought I would. Although I wonder if that's a mental coping thing, and as soon as I do have the freedom to run around and do all those things again, maybe I will. But for now, I am enjoying this kind of slower pace, I guess, or at least I'm enjoying thinking about just one big project as opposed to a bunch of little projects. Yeah. And I also have found that for my sanity, I need to do something creative for myself every day. Otherwise, I feel bad. So that's been kind of nice to be oh, well, the thing you need. So that feels comforting, and it's free. I just have to think creatively for an hour a day for a project that no one has asked, me to think creatively for, and I'll feel good.
That's wonderful. It's like, when you get into a good routine with going to the gym or exercising and then you take a couple days off, you feel bad and you're like, oh, I know I just need to have a workout and then I'll feel better.
Yeah. It's really nice to be oh, that's the thing. Great. Yeah. I can do that.
That's easy. That's really wonderful. This has been a really lovely conversation and I really want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're very busy and it's,
well, I mean, I've spent the hour telling you I'm not.
Oh, man. Ah, yes. Let me peel the cucumbers off of my eyes. Ugh, feeling refreshed. I told you it was a bit of a spa day of a convo. Man. That joke is lame. Thank you so much, Natasha, for joining me on the podcast. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and I really appreciate it. Be sure to follow Natasha on social media. I'll put her handles in the show notes. And check out her stuff on Comedy Central and tune in to A Little Late with Lily Singh on NBC. As for me, we're in the final countdown, guys. So I'm going to go work on that. But until then, I'll talk to you. Bye.